Kirtland's warbler was historically one of the first endangered species birds in the U.S. There was only a population of less than 164 pairs in the mid-1970s. But thanks to conservation efforts by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the U.S. Forest Service, the Nature Conservancy, and others, the numbers of Kirtlands has increased to well over 2,000 pairs. So it really is a great success story, and it has helped us to learn a lot more about conservation of wildlife. And because of all the hard work, this bird was delisted in 2019.
Hello from Eleuthera. We're on the non-breeding grounds of the Kirtland's warbler, and this is where they spend a little bit more than 6 months a year, refueling and getting ready to go back to Michigan. We found that the bird's health and survival rates depend on the availability of food on this island, and that of food availability is threatened by disturbances like development or agriculture or even hurricanes. And so our work is to ensure that there's as much habitat on Eleuthera and the other islands of the Bahamas where Kirtland's warblers spend their winters, so that when these disturbances come up, they don't impact the greater habitat so much.
The Kirtland's warbler, like many other migratory species, they spend more of their time on their wintering grounds than they do on the breeding grounds. So if something happens to them here, then that could have negative effects on them moving up north. And so conservation has to be all-encompassing. You have to encompass both the wintering and the breeding grounds of species like this. And so that's what we're working to achieve here in the Bahamas. The Kirtland's Warbler project started in 2002, and it was designed to help us understand the Kirtland's warbler on its wintering grounds. There was a lot of research that was done on the bird on its in its breeding grounds, but not in the wintering grounds. And what also makes the project so special is that it was geared towards training young Bahamians to become conservation stewards and help with the conservation effort in the Bahamas. And I am one of those students that was a part of the Kirtland's Warbler project from 2008 to 2010. In the early years of the Kirtland's project, there was a lot of ground truthing and searching that was going on. We wanted to find where these birds were staying. And so for months, some of my colleagues would go out and they'd spend hours, days looking throughout the island for the habitats that these birds were interested in. And then also, we were catching birds, banding them, and putting radio transmitters on these birds. And those radio transmitters told us a lot about the movements of these Kirtlands. And some of those birds were actually flying to a special spot, which was goat farms. And so when we were doing the research in the goat farms, it turns out that the numbers of Kirtland's warblers seem to be concentrated on the goat farms. So we wanted to know why. And so we looked at the habitat of the goat farms. It turns out it is early successional scrubbing because goats are browsers, so they're browsing and eating a lot of the vegetation. And the sheep also eating a lot of the vegetation. But the goats and the sheep, they tend to have been avoiding or not eating as much of the important Kirtland's fruit. Black torch, white sage, snowberry. They was predominantly avoiding those types of habitats. So guess what's happening? Those plants are now growing in larger numbers and higher densities, which means more fruit for the birds, which means higher numbers of those birds coming in.
So we're working directly with a farmer named Mrs. Simonet, trying to quantify the value of a farm habitat for Kirtland's warblers compared to natural habitats or other disturbed habitats. And so our goal is to foster public-private partnerships so that we can expand the conservation network in the Bahamas. It's really beneficial for us to partner with locals who are involved with these birds and care enough to take some extra time to do a little bit extra work to make life a little bit better for the birds.
If we can continue to work with landowners, if we can continue to work with the government and other NGOs, we can make some positive strides forward with the protection of this bird and many other species of birds in the country.
Working on this project has been very fulfilling for me. We get to address the three elements of sustainability, the environment, the society, and the economics behind it. And we get to focus on a very unique species, the Kirtland's warbler. It's been really remarkable work and really rewarding for me. And I'm looking forward to seeing how we can continue doing this work and perpetuate this relationship that we have between Bahamians and Kirtland's warblers and the environment that we all share.
So even though the Kirtland's warbler has been delisted, it is still a conservation-reliant species, which means that if we stop doing work to assist this bird, chances are its numbers are going to decrease again, and then it's going to go right back on the endangered species list. So we have to actively continue with conservation efforts in both the wintering grounds and the breeding grounds.